All right, so welcome to our, I'm not sure what installment of 21st Century Office Hours for Cohort 27. I have already apologized once, but I do want to apologize again that we had to reschedule our meeting that was supposed to be on Tuesday. I have been out with some kind of strange sickness, fever, sickness. Hopefully it's gone now, but I felt miserable the last 2 days. And so had to reschedule today's meeting. So I apologize for any inconvenience that may have caused any of you. And I appreciate your patience. My brain is still not quite where it needs to be, but I do feel a ton better. So anyway, as you all probably know, these office hours meetings are pretty laid back. We really like to answer any questions you have about the application or the RFA. I do have a few things that I would like to go over with everyone today regarding MOUs and contracts. But before we do that, I would love to take any questions that you guys have that you came here to ask. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions. And then if nobody has any, then I'll go over some of the things that I had planned to go over this week with you guys. And you're welcome to either unmute yourself and talk, or you can put your question in the chat, whichever one you prefer. No questions. All right, for those of you who are just joining us, we've got the floor is open for any questions you might have.
For tomorrow,
Sophia. Okay, go ahead.
For tomorrow, I see on the calendar where the peer reviewer application is due.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, panic.
So if you're applying for the grant, that's not something you really need to worry with. That's for people, usually it's from other states, or it can be just from other organizations applying to be a peer reviewer for the program.
Gotcha.
So it's nothing that you guys have to do if you're applying for the grant.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. You scared me for a minute. I was like, oh gosh, what did I forget? Let's do tomorrow. That one is good. Okay. Okay, so until we have some other questions pop up, let me go over some things that kind of came up this week that we added to our Q&A document that should have been uploaded. I can't remember if I sent it to be uploaded at the end of last week or on Monday. I think it should have been the end of last week because I was not in the office Monday and went and hung out with a bunch of elementary kiddos and of course was sick by the time I got home Monday night. Hopefully they gave it to me and not the other way around. But a couple of things I wanted to bring up.
Hey, Amanda.
Yes. Hey.
This is Kelly. I just want to tell you that is uploaded on the website.
Oh, good.
The most recent is February the 19th.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Kelly. Kelly's wonderful about getting these things uploaded for me. But I tried to bold the items that were new to the Q&A document. One thing I added, and this didn't necessarily come up because of a question that anyone asked, but it came up due to one of our cohort 26 applicants. So they had a for-profit entity that was going to be their joint partner. I think I've mentioned this in the last couple of office hours, but maybe not. Everything is starting to run together. But please note that if you're going to have a joint partner or a joint applicant, there's a difference between a community partner and a joint partner. A joint partner really should be very involved in both the writing of the grant and the implementation of the grant, the management of the grant, the evaluation portions, all of it. I can show you kind of an example one that I actually used ChatGPT to help me come up with kind of a last minute as an example, but it gave me a really good example. I'll share that with you for a minute, in a minute, but one of the things I want to make sure that everyone understands is that if you decide you're going to co-apply with a company that is a for-profit, you can do that. That is allowed, but understand that it can't be, you cannot apply for this grant with a business, a for-profit business as a co-applicant, and then spend money from that business to support the program. Like large amounts, you can't turn around and then buy a lot of your curriculum and materials from that program with 21st Century funds, because that would be considered a conflict of interest, because someone who is actively involved in administering and partnering in the program then is turned around and profited off of the 21st Century funds. So that is not allowed. So we've never had that happen before, but we realized it happened at Cohort 26. It was just something that we didn't catch. So again, this year we're going to be much more careful about looking at our joint applicants to make sure that, number one, they really truly are a joint applicant, and to make sure that, there's no issues with, or potential issues with, conflict of interest or anything like that. Kelly, there's a question asking if the website has a place to click that links you directly to our YouTube channel where all the training videos are located.
Yes, if you go to resources, and go down to sub-grantee resources, and you scroll down to the bottom, it says YouTube resources. It has our logo,
Okay.
but you can click there, and then do you have it on your signature, Amanda?
I need to add it. I have a link to the web page, but not the actual YouTube channel. But I will try to remember. I've been meaning to do that, to add the YouTube channel to my link.
Okay, it is on here. I'll see if I can make it more prominent, but yes, it is on here. So go resources, sub-grant, and then sub-grantee resources, and then scroll to the bottom.
And I may be wrong, but I think once you click on one video, it'll take you to our channel, and then you can at the top just click on the 21st Century like logo, and it'll take you to all the other videos that are available as well.
Yep.
I believe that works that way as well. It does for me, but I'm the owner, so I'm not sure if it does that for everybody else or not.
It goes straight into our big page and shows them all. So yeah, it's easy to see.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to open the floor back up for any other questions before I discuss any other things that have come up this week.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, please.
And please forgive me, because the last time I wrote a grant was Cohort 17, so I'm trying to switch my mind.
Okay.
Because I know in our narrative back then, we would put whatever we're going to do in parentheses so many times a week. So I've got Form 9 here, and it's got strategies and activities. Is that where I list? Because like we're going to use, say we're going to use We Build It Better, we have that, or we're going to use iExcel or Starbase. Mm-hmm. In that column where it says strategies and activities, is that where I list that now, or do I still put it somehow in a narrative?
Well, you're gonna list it in multiple places. So, you would put it in your narratives when it's talking about strategies and activities. Am I glitching? I know my screen is glitching. It's doing something really weird. Can y'all hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on my screen. I don't know if y'all are seeing the same thing I am. So I believe it's, let me find the correct. So component 3, make sure I'm telling you the right one. Component 3B is where you're going to talk about your strategies and activities, and that's where you would list any vendors or anything that you're bringing in to provide activities for your students.
All right.
But then you'll also mention it in the Form 9. The difference between the reason why we have you kind of do double the work is because in the application itself and the narratives that you're putting in, they're not tied directly from a program goal to an objective to an activity to budget. But that Form 9 does do that. The Form 9 enables you to show how this item that I'm purchasing is related to this activity, and I'm doing this activity because I'm meeting this particular objective, which is going to help me meet this particular goal. So it links everything that you're everything from what you're purchasing to your goals. It kind of shows a link across the board of how those things are related to each other, which you can't really do in the application itself. So you are kind of asked to do double duty, but that's the reasoning behind it.
All right, and this is also for the things that I don't have to purchase.
Yes, that could be. It could also be for things that you don't have to purchase. So it could be something that you're doing that actually has no cost related to it, but it is related to meeting your program goals and objectives. So
Okay.
yes, you would put those items as well. And
All
then
right.
when you just get to the budget part, you would just say, being provided in kind, or, already have the equipment or whatever, if you want. You don't have, you could just put no budget items related to this expense. So, and it could just be that part of somebody's salary is related to that expense, because whoever you're going to pay to actually teach that activity would be related to that expense.
Okay. And then one more question.
Okay.
The priority points, I know we cannot get for CSI and TSI, but our school, because of our 5th grade math, we have been labeled as limited support. So would that kind of work together, or it just has to strictly be CSI and TSI?
It's strictly CSI, TSI, or ATSI labeled schools. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
For that particular one. Okay. Janie, I think you had your hand up, and then I think there's one in the chat.
Yes, I do. I have a quick question about the MOU for us LEA with the principals.
Okay.
If I'm the one writing, am I signing the MOU with myself? Because I mean, if we're writing it from the district level and they sign the assurances, most districts don't give that Power School information to the school level. Do you see what I'm saying? As far as that admin, only certain people get that type of access, which would be myself. So
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I did that correctly, because I
Sure.
don't want to mess it up.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. This is one of the things I was going to go over today, so that's kind of perfect. Actually, before we do that, let me answer the question in the chat really quick, and then I'm going to go to that, because that's what I was going to cover today.
Okay, thank
You're
you.
welcome. So it says, can you pay someone's salary from the joint co-applicant? You can. You can. So if you have a joint applicant, actually, I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and share my screen, because that answers this other thing I was going to show you guys answers that question also. So let me show you. So hold on, let me share my screen, and then we'll go through that really quick. Okay. All right. This is the wrong document. Give me 1 second. We found the right one. Okay. So this is going to be just an example of a high quality joint application or partnership. And to answer your question, let's say that 21st Century Subgrantee River Valley School District is going to partner with the STEM Reach Foundation, and they're going to be joint applicants. Okay. So they have both participated. Let me make this bigger so you guys can see it, maybe, hopefully. Okay, so they have joined together in both the co-planning and shared program design. So they work together to create surveys, they plan sessions together, they design their daily schedule and enrichment offerings together. Okay, And then integrated staffing. So this answers this question that was in the chat. Instead of subcontracting, the partners are going to share staffing. So let's say the school district is going to provide the site coordinator, certified teachers for after-school tutoring, and access to school facilities, internet, and transportation. But then STEM research is going to provide trained STEM facilitators who co-teach inquiry-based activities, a curriculum aligned with the district's math and science standards, ongoing professional development for both district and nonprofit staff. So in this case, their trained STEM facilitators could be paid to provide that service to the program. Where an issue could potentially come into play is if, without going through proper procurement and proper bidding and things like that, if STEM Reach said, we are going to teach STEM and the 21st Century Program is going to buy our STEM kits to do that. And we're going to spend $80,000 on STEM kits from our curriculum that we offer. And we're not going to get bids. We're not going to bid it out to potential other STEM companies. We're not going to try to see if anyone has a cheaper price. We're just going to solely profit. We're going to design the program so that our kits are what's used, and then we're going to sell those kits to the program and make money off of it. That would be considered a conflict of interest and would not be allowed. Now, if you could potentially, if you went through proper procurement, did your bids, I think in this case, with it being like, if it was $80,000, $100,000, you would have to, bid it out, not just get quotes, but have a bid, have it with other STEM companies could bid in it. If you followed all the proper procurement, then you may be okay, but then there still is that potential perceived conflict of interest that could take place from the public. And so I would be really careful about doing something like that, where one of the partners was actually financially benefiting from the partnership. That would be, even if you followed all the proper procurement standards, you could still be accused or have that perceived notion of the public of, okay, we just are going to spend all this money with this STEM company because they are who apply, they are a joint applicant in the process. And so just be really, really careful about something like that. But let's say that they're not going to buy any of their own equipment. They're just providing teachers to help teach the STEM activities. And that would be perfectly fine for you to pay those STEM instructors to come in and do that. Because they're offering a product, or they're offering those services as part of their partnership. Hopefully they would be able to show that they're doing it at a discount or less than they would typically offer somebody who is purchasing that's not a partner. You want to see that there is a definite partnership in this, and that the goal is the benefit the students. So notice evidence of true partnership. The staff that collaborates, they don't operate in silos. They plan weekly lessons and student supports together between both the school district and the STEM Reach representatives that are in this partnership. They have shared data and student progress monitoring. So again, they both sign a data sharing agreement, and they both take place in the review process of benchmark assessments, attendance, behavior, SEL indicators, family participation rates. They meet monthly to interpret this data and adjust their programming. Give some examples here, but just notice that both parties actively participate in making decisions about the program's flow from shared data, not just one-sided reporting. They collaboratively offer family engagement activities. So both organizations co-lead family engagement events such as STEM Family Nights, student showcase events, workshops on digital literacy. These are just examples. families see both logos on the flyers, facilitators wear both organization badges, things like that. It's obvious that it's being put on by both parties. And then even shared budgeting and sustainability planning. So they have a collaboratively built budget where the district handles salaries for academic staff and transportation. STEM Reach contributes in-kind donations such as curriculum kits or volunteers, and applies for matching grants to extend the STEM programming. Both organizations co-develop a sustainability plan with diversified funding sources. And each partner has a visible documented role in financial planning and stability. So, and then of course they join together in the evaluation and reporting. So this is just an example that I literally used like a ChatGPT type service to help me come up with, because I was like, oh, I need that really quickly, and I did it really quick. But this is a great example. All right, now let me go back to Janie's question. I want to share with you an MOU between, the question was about having an MOU between the site and the LEA, and what's the reasoning behind that? And you're not the first person that's asked that. And so this is another thing that we put into the Q&A because the question came from one of our applicants asking, why will we have to do a contract with the superintendent and principals if we already have them doing the certification, the form, I think it's form 4 and 5, the certification forms. And the reasoning behind this is because those certification forms, the items that are listed in those forms are really our requirements from the State Department of Education for what we expect a principal to do or to agree to, and what we expect the superintendent to agree to if they apply for a 21st century grant. But an MOU between the 21st century site and the LEA is really more detailed about what that site's expectations are from its own leadership, okay, and vice versa. So we created, upon their request, and we just said we have to share with everybody. So we created this this example memorandum of understanding, and of course we've made everything up in here. But this just kind of gives you an idea of what it could look like, okay? So this is a MOU between ABC Elementary 21st Century and ABC City Schools, and it has the dates, has the information from the 21st Century representative from that site. It could be the program director, it could be the site coordinator, but it needs to be site specific, okay? Gives the purpose is to establish an agreement among the above mentioned parties concerning their respective roles and responsibilities for the implementation of this grant. Gives the vision of the ABC Elementary 21st Century program. Okay, this is something that you're supposed to create yourself when you're doing, this is part of the template, but it says in the template, this is not given to you. This section is not given to you. It just says, here's where you describe the vision of your 21st century program. And so we just kind of created something here. But let's get down to the important part, which would be the responsibilities of both parties. So we started off saying what the responsibilities are of the 21st century program itself, that site. They're going to serve approximately 100 students in grades kindergarten through 5th grade, operate 175 days of the school year from 3:30 to 6 o'clock p.m., operate during summer programming on these dates and times, provide academic enrichment with align with state standards, including literacy and mathematics, along with youth development and family engagement activities. Then, as far as data sharing and reporting, the site is going to make sure they maintain compliance with FERPA and all applicable privacy laws, utilize student level academic and attendance data provided by the LEA solely for program evaluation. I'm not going to read all these to you, but you can read these yourself. Try to find, these are pretty general, okay? Here's one. Provide a collaboration liaison to coordinate weekly with school day administrators and instructional staff to align after-school programming with school day curriculum where possible. So I put in that weekly part. It could be bi-weekly, it could be monthly, however you want to set it up for your site. But everybody is supposed to have a collaboration liaison. It can be part of somebody else's job duty, but they are supposed to have someone who is supposed to collaborate with the school day administrators and teachers to make sure that we're aligned, that you guys are aligning your after school programs with what is going on during the school day. Sorry, this should actually be indented. Sorry. Well, it's being complicated, but anyway, align tutoring and enrichment activities with state academic standards, school improvement plans. Again, some of these are kind of general. Ensure all staff meet background check and fingerprinting requirements as required by state. Maintain appropriate staff to student ratios. Okay, so a lot of this is very general. It could be detailed, but it's mostly general when it comes to the 21st century program. But here's when we get to the city schools responsibilities, this is where you can get more detailed, okay? So for example, you can talk about data sharing, talk about the exact, the timely access to student data necessary for program implementation, including attendance records, academic performance, assessment results, behavioral discipline records. You could put benchmark assessments in here as well. Specific benchmark assessments for that you would need for that school could be listed. You're going to ask that they designate a district school contact for secure data exchange, and that they designate a district or school employee who will be responsible for the timely marking of students as 21st century in PowerSchool. You could even name that employee if you wanted to get that detailed with it. Of course, ensure compliance with FERPA. Here's another important one. Provide access to facilities and space. So this is where I got really specific. We're going to provide designated and secure access to ABC Elementary Classroom number 125 to be used as an esports technology room for 21st century after school and summer programming only, and ensure that the room and equipment within it are not accessible or used outside of 21st century programming. This is something that we have issues with all the time during the school year. We have issues with sites that don't have space for the things that they want to do, that they said that they were going to do in their application.
I can't hear her. I don't know what's wrong with my volume
I
on
can
this
hear you,
computer.
Kelly. Okay. Sorry. Let's see. Can everybody else hear me though? Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so let me actually get it where I can see the chat really quickly. Give me 1 second. Just realized I wasn't able to see that. Okay. All right. They are going to agree to provide a designated, appropriate, and secure location to store materials and equipment purchased with 21st century funding, and ensure materials and supplies are not accessible or used outside of the 21st century programming. You could even say they're going to provide the closet that is in the hallway next to room 143, you know. And I would advise you to be specific about things like this, because all the time we have issues where our sites, they write a great grant and they want to purchase all of these things, but then when they're actually in it, there's no place to store things. They didn't talk about that with the school principal before they got their grant started. Those were not details that they worked out ahead of time that could have saved a huge amount of headache and problems later on down the line if those things had been decided upon early and you had kind of a contract, an agreement in place to ensure that these things happen. Okay. I even went further to say that they'll ensure access to the following locations within ABC Elementary School for both after school and summer programming. So all classrooms in the 100 level hallway daily, library, media center at least once per week, computer lab at least once per week, gymnasium and outside recreational areas daily, restrooms in the 100-level hallway daily. So if you have a specific area of the school where you plan to have your 21st century program, then you need an agreement to be able to use those spaces for your program ahead of time. Okay, this shows that you have worked that out ahead of time and you have an agreement for that. I was going to mention an example. Oh, and notice I said for both the after school and summer programming. We've had an issue come up very recently where the 21st century program wrote into their grant that they're going to offer a summer program, but now their school system is trying to force them to move that summer program to a location where they always have summer programs every year. Well, this is going to potentially cause an issue because there could be supplanting issues since they've always funded a summer program to occur in this new location. Now they're going to have to be really careful that they don't supplant. They only use 21st century funds to add to what they normally already provide at that site. And so again, if they had had that conversation with the school system ahead of time and ensured that they were going to be able to use the original building during the summer, that problem wouldn't be a problem. They could have talked that out ahead of time. So things like this pop up all the time, and the more detailed you are in this MOU, the better. It also is a binding contract or a binding document that is more binding than the certification that we ask principals and superintendents to sign, those forms 4 and 5. Those aren't necessarily binding, but these should be. So now you may have to involve a lawyer in the process, but these documents, an MOU should be a binding agreement. Did a little bit more research since our last meeting. Trying to think of what else we included here. School day collaboration. We said that they would facilitate coordination of weekly meetings between the school day teachers and administrators and the 21st century coordination liaison. Support recruitment of eligible students, ensure that the school day teachers of 21st century students complete end of year surveys for federal reporting. That's another big one that we have a hard time getting those end of year surveys completed by the teachers, the school day teachers. And if I don't know why this is not lined up correctly, but if your LEA, if your leadership of your LEA has agreed to make this a priority, then you can easier enlist their help in getting them to reach out to those teachers and making sure they fill out those teacher surveys. That is part of federal reporting, and so they're very important. It's very important that they fill those out. And yes, we are going to provide a copy of these examples. I didn't want to, I was going to have Kelly upload them before this meeting, but I figured something might come up and I might need to change something or add something. And so as soon as this meeting is over, I will ask her to upload this to the website. It may be tomorrow because this is like the end of her work day, so it probably will be tomorrow before it's actually uploaded. But yes, we will get these examples uploaded. So I'm not going to go into this entire thing. Again, I don't know what's going on with this alignment. It wasn't like this before earlier, but I'll get these things fixed. But this is the reason why we ask you to do both. A lot of states do require this. We haven't in the past, but it is something that we decided to require this year just because of all the issues that we see pop up throughout the year, that if these things had been decided upon in advance, there wouldn't be as big of an issue as what we've had, in the past year or two. All right. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, let me make sure I'm not skipping anything. And then Jennifer, you clarified when you were asking about paying someone who works for the joint applicant. Yes, you would only pay them for the time that they're working with the 21st century program, not other duties that they would have with that company. That's exactly right. And only if it's reasonable and necessary. All right. The next question I see is you wanted to confirm whether there is a character or word limit for the responses entered within each section of the application. I've noticed that the text fields do not appear to restrict the number of characters when typing. I don't believe so. Now, I don't know if that is unlimited. I know at one time, sorry, I'm gonna have to ignore that. I know at one time there was a 5,000 character limit, but last year, after we wrote into the grant that there was a 5,000 character limit, we found out that there wasn't an actual 5,000 character limit. I haven't had anybody tell me that they have reached a limit yet, so I don't think that there is a limit, but you know, there may be one eventually, but we don't know what it is if there is one. You should be able to type into it as much as you need to. Okay. I don't know what is going on. I don't know if I'm fixing to lose my screen or what, but it is going crazy. Okay, let's see. Will this MOU go in the related documents section? Okay, so I don't know if you mean the sample or the MOU you create. The MOUs you create need to go into the required documents section under Form 3. And then anything that any contracts that you create that are not necessarily required can go under Form 11. But yeah, the MOUs that you create would go under Form 3, and you can upload multiple documents under Form 3. So you don't have to upload it all into one document. You can have multiple uploads into each of those document sections. Okay. All right, any other questions about this MOU? Now, I know we've also said that, like, if you were going to contract with your transportation department, you should have an MOU with them as well. Could you combine that with this? Potentially, you could, but we would want to make sure that all the appropriate people have signed this. So, like, for example, I started to include in this example, or add to this example, Melissa worked on this one for me. I started to add to this about like CMP requirements that the school system would ensure that the CMP program was going to provide breakfast and lunch during the summer. Okay. But the problem with that is that you would think that the principal or superintendent would know whether the CMP program was going to run during the summer, but maybe they don't always know that. And so we've had situations in the past where the LEA agreed to do that, but then when it came time for summer programming to start, that CMP program decided not to run during the summer. And here we are with an agreement that the CMP program is going to provide breakfast and lunch, but it was an agreement between LEA leadership, not the CMP director. And, you know, it could have been, you know, we could have tried, they could have tried to take that to a lawyer or whatever, but it would have been better for that agreement to have been between the CMP director. Okay. I'm gonna try, normally I have it mute everyone when they come in, but did not do that. And now I'm having a hard time. So I'm hearing some feedback from some people. But if you guys can mute yourselves, that'd be great, unless you're asking a question. All right. So I would recommend doing a separate contract between like the 21st Century Program and CMP, and a separate MOU between the 21st Century Program and the Transportation Department, if the Transportation Department is providing transportation for the program and you're paying them to provide that transportation. That's what I would suggest. But, you know, you can go by whatever, whatever your legal department tells you is best, as long as you have met all the requirements that we've asked for. Okay. Any other questions about this? We need to have you, we need to have an MOU with our partners, I'm assuming is what you meant to ask there. Not
I
necessarily
did.
for
I was
just,
I was typing fast. I'm sorry. I
okay, you're
did.
okay. You're okay. No problem.
Because we have a lot of partners. I have like 6
Mhm.
pages of partners. So I didn't know if I need
Yeah.
to do an MOU with, each one of those
You
partners.
can, but you don't have to, not with your community partners. A joint
Okay.
applicant or partner, yes, you would definitely need an MOU with a joint applicant, but you don't necessarily have to have an MOU between a community partner. But I would suggest that you put one in place if they're providing something really good that your program is going to be dependent on, right? So if they say that they're going to provide free
Yes.
mentoring, like if they're going to send in mentors to come in and work with your program 2 times a week for free, it's the church or whatever, local church, and that's something that your programming is dependent on, then I would go ahead and fill out an MOU to lay out the details of that partnership so that there is more of a binding partnership there, that they're going to provide these services. Because if you don't have that in place, they can very easily back out without any kind of repercussion or anything. So I would say that's up to you. It's not something that we require for community partners, but it's something that you might want to do just to be safe, especially if it's something that your program is dependent on.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. In areas I have been in, there isn't a limit. Any chance the application due date could push out to April with the NAA conference, spring breaks, and now obtaining new MOUs? Is it going to take us a lot more time to get all these? No, I'm sorry, we plan to try to stay on schedule with the MOU, because if we keep pushing it back, we will not be able to announce the winners by the end of the school year. I'm already nervous that that's not going to be an option, and we really need to do that because program directors really need to be in place and hired before the summer starts, because we start training during the summer. So if possible, people need to be in place and hired at the end of this school year, and so we need to get those announcements out as quickly as possible. The template and everything is still the same. The requirements and the grant are still the same. This was just an example of what it could look like. So you can, these are details that you can include. Not necessarily going to say you have to include those details, but that's kind of the purpose of this this MOU between the site and the school leadership, school and LEA leadership, so that you can kind of work out all those details in advance. But we really need to try to stay on schedule if at all possible. I'm sorry. Now, I'll just go ahead and throw this out
Hey,
there.
everybody. This is Kelly. I
Hey,
don't know what's
Kelly.
going on with Amanda, but in the meantime, while she's working on things, I thought, oh, Amanda, you back?
I don't think I ever
think
left. I'm not sure
I
that I
can hear
left.
you. I don't know if everybody else can.
Yeah, I think everybody has been able to hear me, but I'm not sure. Have I
Oh, they
broken
can.
out?
Okay. My
Yeah.
speakers are messed up.
Okay, sorry.
Keep going.
Okay, sorry. Now I am having issues with my screen for sure. Like it's flashing and doing all kinds of weird things. I'm probably about to lose it, is what it looks like. But okay, yeah. Oh, what I was gonna say a second ago, there is a potential that we may have to postpone and push it back because of grant reviewers, because we still don't have our contract with USA in place yet, and they are who we have to hire our grant reviewers through. And so if that gets pushed back, if we know for sure that's going to get pushed back, then we may add some more time for applications to be submitted, but we won't know that until closer to the deadline. So I'm hoping that's not going to happen, but I would definitely plan for trying to have everything done by the 20th. Okay. Who will pay the CMP department for the summer if it's not included in the grant? Okay, so summer feeding, there's a couple of different programs that your CMP department can use to provide summer feeding, but they're not required. Only reason why I know anything about this is my husband works for CMP here at the State Department of Education. And he's like the expert. And so I always have to reach out to him to ask questions about CMP. And he explained to me that that the state does not require all CMP programs to operate during the summer because some systems, they just can't afford to do that. They can't afford to pay for staff to come in and operate the program. And actually operating a summer program would actually cause them to lose money, and they just can't afford to do it. They encourage them to when they can, but a lot can't do that because the federal government only reimburses these programs a certain amount of money, and it's not very much at all. And so a lot of times it's not enough to pay for the food and the building costs and, the staff and things like that. And so some summer programs choose not to operate during the summer. If that's the case, then we can allow the 21st Century Program to purchase breakfast and lunch and snack from other sources. We have kind of a list of steps to go through to seek out these snacks and lunches. So for example, our first choice is to see if you can find a nearby a nearby CMP program at a nearby school district that could potentially provide those meals for you. You would have to pay for them, but the cost of those meals would be cheaper than having to buy them from like a local restaurant or local church or something like that. That's another option as well. There sometimes are churches and things like that in a region that do offer summer feeding. Even though they're not a school, they offer it for their community. And so you might be able to purchase food from those resources. And so we can try to help you find resources in your area to purchase that from, but it has to be pre-approved by the ALSDE. We help you go through the steps of finding other resources to provide that food. Of course, your budget has to be able to support it. And, worst case scenario, we will allow you to purchase food from like a local, like Chick-fil-A or something like that, if that's the only option available to you, but we try to find other options first. Ones that we know are going to be in alignment with federal program rules and regulations when it comes to what you can feed students. And so, but if that's something that we end up having to do, then we do have approval to do that, but it has to be a plan that's approved by the ALSDE. Okay, can we include a person in the budget to prepare the food on site if CMP is not participating in summer feeding on site? Okay, let me think about this. Okay, so I know that you can't pay for a CMP person if they are having a program. So like, for example, we've had some programs in the past who tried to pay a CMP person to like stay after school to hand out the snacks, and that's not allowable if a CMP program is going on. The CMP employees have to be paid through CMP. But if they aren't running a program, I believe you are allowed to hire a person to prepare or hand out those snacks if there isn't a CMP program running at that site. So I'm pretty sure, I'll have to check with my husband to make absolutely sure, but I'm like 95% sure that's correct. You can hire somebody for that purpose if there's not a CMP program running at the site at that time. Okay. All right. I'm seeking clarification regarding allowable expenditures under 21st Century Grant. Are sites permitted to allocate funds to compensate the CSFO for grant-related fiscal oversight and reporting responsibilities? If so, would this be considered an indirect cost, or must it be budgeted differently? Additionally, are we permitted to compensate the transportation director for extended hours directly related to managing after-school transportation for the program? Okay, so let me answer the first part of that question first. So for a CSFO, yes, you can compensate a CSFO with 21st Century funds How you do that is going to be dependent on when they're going to be working and how you want to set it up with your school system. In some school systems, working the 21st Century Grant is part of a handful of other duties that the CSFO is responsible for. And so we would just pay the portion of their salary that is equitable to how much time they spend on 21st Century. So, you know, if they're also over approving all the other federal programs and Title I, Title II, Title III, all of those, and they do other things, then probably only a percentage, like a small percentage of their budget would come out of 21st Century funds. And so you could do that, like we could pay a portion of their FTEs, you know, like 20% of their salary or 10% of their salary. It could be done that way. If that CSFO is going to work outside of their contracted hours with the school system to provide oversight, fiscal oversight for the 21st Century program, then it could be additional to what they make during the day. So it could be kind of like maybe a contracted amount. That contracted amount would, of course, need to be reasonable and necessary, but it can almost be sort of like treated like a stipend. Additional funding for them to work outside of their normal contracted hours, as you know, in that fiscal responsibility. So you could do it that way. So really you would just need to, different LEAs do it in different ways, but it just kind of depends on if it's going to be part of their everyday job, or is it going to be or is it going to be above and beyond their everyday job, an extended hours job? Will depend on how you kind of do that. For the transportation director, I've never seen a transportation director be compensated. I have seen, you know, bus drivers and things like that, us pay bus drivers for their time, of course, taking students home for those for the after school programs. I'm not saying that it's not allowed. I would just say that you would just need to provide a really good justification as to why they would need to be compensated. Like, do they need to be there to check the buses in and out? Like, you know, that's something that's never come up before. But if you have, you know, if you have justification or if it's reasonable and necessary to pay them to do that extra work, then, you know, we would be open to it as long as it's reasonable and necessary and makes sense. Okay. Okay. Priority 3, targeted services. It calls for juvenile justice involvement. What specific data is needed for that? Let me go look at that really quick. See what I'm talking about. So I think it just gives you a list of possible data that you could provide for those priorities. So, okay, so priority 3 is ESSA targeted services priority. So this is the one that talks about you're going to be serving, you're going to enroll and serve students who might be at risk for academic failure, dropping out of school, involvement in criminal or delinquent activities, or who lack strong positive role models. And we can't just take your word for it. We need some sort of data to back up what you're saying. So it gives you examples of evidence that may be provided. And those include demographic and academic data, such as standardized test scores, grades, retention rates, attendance records, risk indicators such as disciplinary referrals, juvenile justice involvement. So I would think that that is referring to how frequently is your juvenile justice department. I don't know exactly what that's called, but the police or, you know, I don't know if that's handled by the city, the county, whoever handles crimes at the juvenile level. How often are they having to work with students that go to the school that you plan to be working with? Do they have a large presence? Do a lot of your do a lot of the students in your school have some sort of juvenile record? So that's what it's asking there. Any kind of data you can provide to show that a lot of the kids that you are working with have juvenile records, or people that are in the community, young people in the community have kind of a history of having a lot of juvenile justice involvement. So the Justice Department or the police or whatever, that whoever, I'm sorry, I should know this, but whoever really works with crimes at the juvenile level, whoever that is, you could pull data from that. Socioeconomic data can be pulled. Of course, surveys with parents and community members, but those are just all example things that you can pull to kind of provide evidence that you do plan to serve students who are at risk for these things. Okay, so there was a question, how does that work with principals? And I'm assuming you're referring back to talking about the CSFO. I think that popped up when I was talking about how you can pay the CSFO. Principals is kind of principals is sort of the same way. You can only pay them with 21st Century Fund. Well, so let me step back on this. You could not pay part of a principal's salary to work the 21st Century program, because that's kind of already part of not to work 21st Century program, but for a principal to be at the school for a certain amount of hours to a certain time each day is usually already part of their contracted work. Whether it's to be there for basketball games or whatever, if there's an after-school program running to make sure that things are running okay. Typically, a principal, that's part of their job, is to oversee the school up until a certain time of the day, maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock. I'm not exactly sure. It probably depends on the LEA. So what I've seen most 21st Century programs do that have actually said that their principal is their site coordinator is they only use 21st Century funds to pay them after their contracted time is over. And so if they're contracted to work, let's say, for example, they're contracted to work until 4:30, then they use 21st Century funds to pay them for the time from 4:30 to 5:30 or 6 o'clock or whatever time the program ends. Do keep in mind, though, that site coordinator can also be paid for an extended hour past the program hour times. And so oftentimes we recommend for you to pay that principal for that extended hour as well, so that they have time to do what they need to do that they need to do as part of either as their 21st century goals or, duties, or as a principal. I know I have seen principals kind of complain that they're only getting paid to work like an extra hour, and they're losing their planning time in the afternoon to get done things that they typically would do after school is out. And that is a very justified complaint that I would say you need to consider if you're going to make a principal your site coordinator. I understand that there's certain circumstances where that may be the only person available to do it. And if that's the case, then, we're not going to say you can't do that, but do be mindful that you are taking time away from these principals that they usually would use to catch up on paperwork or, whatever it is that they would typically do until 4:30 in the afternoon. And now they're having to be over a 21st century program during that time. So be mindful that you're asking them really to go above and beyond for not much extra pay. And so I would definitely say give them that extra hour each day with 21st Century funds. We don't mind you doing that. But also just take into consideration that that's something that you want to do, because even with that extra hour, sometimes it ends up being they're only being paid for a couple of extra hours a day. So
what would be a rate, an hourly rate that would be, I guess,
you would need to go by, like, we gave some example best practices.
I think I saw in there the MOU. I think I saw
yeah.
not an MOU. I thought RFA. I thought it was like 45 to 55, somewhere in there like that.
Yep. So let's see. Now, we say that it needs to be based off of what your typical range for a similar position would be at your LEA, but we put in here that the site coordinators pay typically ranges somewhere between $35 and $45 an hour. Can you pay them a little bit more than that if it's justified? Sure. You can pay them a little bit less, but that's typically, we start asking questions if you go too far outside of those guidelines.
So could you consider a stipend maybe, so it could just be like a set amount?
You can, but it still needs to be reasonable and necessary. So it would still kind of
Okay.
need to fall in line with that hourly rate.
Okay.
So even when we have like a site coordinator who's hired through a contract and they say we're just going to pay them one lump sum each year, we still break that down to make sure that lump sum is kind of comparable to the hourly rate that we said is
Okay.
yeah, is reasonable.
Thank you.
Sure. Oh, some great questions today. All right, I'm going to shut up for a minute and see if anybody else has any additional questions or wants to put anything in the chat. I know I'm still sharing my screen.
So like with the ASAP grant, you could do partnerships. But it's nothing like that with this grant. So if you do a partnership, it would consider be a co-applicant at that point.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
exactly sure what the requirements are of the ASAP grant. I know it's a lot less than what we require with 21st Century. But with us, a co-applicant does have to truly be a co-applicant when I'm not sure
Okay.
what they check for ASAP. Yeah.
I got you. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Thank you.
No problem.
I'm not gonna ask nothing else, I promise.
You can ask as many questions as you want to. I'd much rather answer questions than just sit here and ramble. Okay.
So just for clarification's sake, just going back to the partnership piece.
Okay.
So if we, like, for example, if we wanted to partner with like one of our community colleges to help with, like STEM and those types of things like that, they would have to enter into this grant as a joint applicant. Is that what you're saying?
Not
Or do we
necessarily.
have?
Well, they would in order for you to get that priority point and for them to be considered a joint applicant. You can partner with whoever you want to as a community partner. And they can have as many or as much or as little input into the grant, the way that the grant is ran and the design of the grant and all that as you would like. But if they're going to be submitted as a joint applicant, or if you're applying for the grant together, then there has to be kind of equality in both the design of the grant and the implementation of the grant. There needs to be, it doesn't have to be exactly equal, but it needs to be a substantial amount of input from both parties into both the design and the implementation of the grant.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Yes, so I don't always send out the recordings, but I've been trying to, within a day or two after we meet, I've been trying to upload them to the YouTube channel. So, yes, this will definitely be recorded and I'll upload it to the YouTube channel, hopefully this afternoon. If not this afternoon, tomorrow morning. And you should have access to that. And, I'm not sure why you wouldn't have gotten Nia's email from earlier this week. I shared the listserv with her, and so that's who she sent the email to. So if you're not on the listserv, maybe that might be why it didn't go through. I don't know. That's interesting. I haven't been having her send out a whole lot. Like I had planned to have her send out most things, but I'm bad about. It's easier for me just to go ahead and send it myself than to send it to her to send out sometimes. But I was super sick both Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. And so I asked her to send it out for me to let you guys know that Tuesday's meeting was going to be rescheduled. So. We'll check on that. All right. Any other questions? I was trying to remember. Let me go back to the Q&A and see if there's anything else. Okay. Same, I think we already covered this question in last meeting about the transportation supplement. Can you use it for field trips? Not solely for that purpose. You can only apply for the transportation supplement if you are providing transportation to or from your after school or, either from your after school program during the school year or to and or from your summer program during the summer. Then you can apply for the transportation supplement. Now, if you qualify for the transportation supplement, but you don't spend all of the funds, like let's say you are rural and you get $20,000, but it only costs you $15,000 to provide that transportation you said you were going to provide in your grant, you can use that additional $5,000 for whatever other transportation you need for field trips or, transporting kids from one location to another if needed. But you can't get the grant just for that purpose, okay? Or get the supplement for just that purpose. What else? Okay. I don't know if you guys heard me talk about this in the RFA application webinar, but you can upload charts and graphs that you've created in Word. If you go to the narrative box across the top, there's lots of tools for each narrative box. And one of the tools is like copy from Word. So if you create a table or a chart in Word and you copy, you either, right click and copy, or you use Control C, I believe. You can then click that button that says paste from Word and it'll paste it into that narrative box. So you can do that. Somebody had asked about that a couple of months ago. And then I added this information about the difference between the MOU between the 21st Century site and the LEA superintendent and school principal, and that certification form that they have to fill out. I've already talked about that, so I'm not going to read this to you, but if you forget what I said, you're welcome to go back and read this information that just kind of breaks down the difference between the two and why we ask you to do both. And I think that's... someone asked, so there's a question at the beginning of the application details that asks how many students and family members you plan to serve by the program. It's not part of the funding formula. It's like above that. And so they were asking what to put there if they plan to serve like 125 students and family members during the school year and then 125 students and family members during the summer. They were asking whether they should put 125 or 250 for that first question up at the top of the application details. And I just said to put the 125 because that seemed to be the most amount of students or family members they plan to serve at any one time. That's why we have you calculate the two separately, because sometimes the population of students that you serve during the summer look very different than who you serve during the school year, and sometimes they're very similar, and we don't want to count the same students twice, and so that's why we calculate them separately based on the program hours for that particular time. And so far that's worked out really well for us. Another question that was asked to me today over the phone was if we say we're having an academic year and a summer program and it says that we qualify for, let's say, $50,000 for the summer, are we only able to spend $50,000 during the summer? Like, do we have to be specific and spend exactly $50,000 during the summer and then the rest of the money during the school year? And the answer to that is no. As long as you do what you say you were going to do in your application. If you go a little above or a little below during the summer or academic year, or what you said you were going to spend, or what the calculation said that you get for each one, that's fine. We don't go and look to make sure that you're spending exactly what you said, exactly what the calculation said you're supposed to get for summer during summer, and exactly what the calculation said you were going to get for the school year We don't look at it that closely. So as long as you're doing what you said you were going to do both during the academic year and the summer, you can spend those funds however you need to make it work out. All right, when I send these, I'm going to stop sharing this. When I send this example MOU to Kelly to upload, there's a couple of other ones that we created as well that Carla created actually a while back. That's not it. Hold on, give me just 1 second. Okay, so like here is an MOU with a community partner. So between HBO City Schools and CMS Performing Arts, this one, I specify that it's a community partner because they are providing services like on a weekly basis, in-kind services, but they're not fully contributing to the development of the grant and the implementation of the grant, like the administration and the evaluation and everything else. And so they would just be considered a community partner. So I'll upload this one as well. And then we will also upload, and so it just kind of, it's very general. And then a vendor contract exemplar, we have one of those as well. Make that one a little bit bigger. This one is pretty specific. So it's between ABC Schools 21st Century Program and Dexter Designs. And it talks about the scope of services. And so this is actually, so the contract for this one, the example I'm giving, the contract is between ABC Schools, the subgrantee, and this made-up company called Dexter Designs. But they have two 21st century programs. And so, it says in here, the purpose of this contract is to establish the terms and conditions between the above mentioned parties concerning the contractor's provision of goods and services in support of the subgrantees ABC Elementary 21st Century Program and ABC Middle School 21st Century Program. What we often have happen is one contract is done and then people try to upload that one contract from multiple schools. But they don't specify where the services are going to take place. And that's really not the way it should look. It really should be either one for each school, or it should detail what's being provided at each school. And so for this one, I just combined two 21st century sites into one contract because it's being provided by the same vendor. But you'll see that it's broken down by what's being provided at each school. So for scope of services, it says the contractor agrees to provide the following services and goods for the ABC Elementary 21st Century Program. It says art enrichment sessions will be provided by a qualified and experienced art instructor 1 day per week, 2 hours per session during the 36-week school year. And then during the summer, the contractor will provide 4 additional art enrichment sessions 1 day per week, 2 hours per session. And then it details what's going to be provided at the other 21st Century Center, the ABC Middle School. So this one, they're going to do sessions 1 day a week for 1 hour per session. Okay. And then I also have in here, the contractor agrees to provide all required art materials, instructional supplies, and curriculum necessary for program delivery. Then the rest of this wording is kind of general. They're going to deliver structured, age-appropriate art lessons aligned with enrichment goals of the 21st Century Program. Notice there's some bullets that are in italics and there's some that are not. The ones that are in italics are ones that you can make specific to your program's needs. But the ones that are not in italics are things that are requirements, federally required to be in the program or state required. And so, for example, Contractor agrees that all staff and employees and any individuals, including subcontractors that work directly with students, will obtain appropriate fingerprinting and background checks before working with students. That's something that we require from the state. The feds actually require a background check. They don't specify whether it has to be fingerprinted, but we as a state specify that it has to be fingerprinted. So these are not optional, the ones that are not in italics. Okay. And then under funding and compensation, we broke down for services provided to ABC Elementary. They'll be paid. Oh, notice it says up here, contractor will invoice the subgrantee as follows. So $100 per hour for a maximum of 2 hours per week for 36 school year sessions and 4 summer sessions for a total of $8,000. That's at ABC Elementary. And then for ABC Middle School, it's $100 per hour for a maximum of 1 hour per week for 36 school year sessions and 4 summer sessions for a total of $4,000. So those are requirements. That breakdown is a requirement, but then also notice the total maximum amount paid in the contract is also a requirement. So this next section says, please note that hourly rates cover the cost of instructors' compensation and the provision of materials and supplies for art instruction. So that would justify maybe $100 is a little much per hour for an art teacher. But if that art teacher is also providing materials and supplies, then maybe $100 an hour is justifiable, right? We need to make sure we include that in the contract so that we know, okay, this $100 includes them providing all of the materials and supplies as well. So that is justifiable in this case. And then we've got in here, the total maximum amount paid in a contract year may not exceed $12,000. Notice I included the school year and the summer plan. A lot of times we have situations where they get they do a contract for the school year, but not for the summer, but then put that they're going to do, the same person is going to provide services during the summer, but there's no contract for it. Well, that's, that would not be allowable. So you have to have a contract that includes both the school year and summer. Now, another question was asked to me earlier, do we have to upload contracts for the application? No, you do not have to. It says in the RFA that you only have to upload a signed contract if you get the grant within a month of being notified that you've gotten the grant, or actually it has to, I have to go back and check. It's either within a month of being notified you got the grant, or I can't remember exactly how it's worded. I know it has to be approved by the ALSDE first. But my point with that, where was my point going with that? Oh, if you don't upload a contract, then this type of breakdown of how much you plan to pay them and how much you plan for them to work needs to be put into your budget narrative so that we can tell whether the expense is reasonable and necessary. If you just put in your budget that you're going to hire this company, what did we say they're called? Dexter Designs. You're going to hire Dexter Designs to provide art instruction for $12,000. Then that doesn't tell me much at all. Is that for them to come one time? Is that for them to come 10 times? Is that for them to come 36 times? Like what? That doesn't tell me anything. There's no way for us to tell if that expense is reasonable and necessary if you don't provide these details. Typically, you would be expected to provide these details in the contract, but you don't have to upload a contract yet. So we expect you to provide those details in your budget narrative if you don't want to upload a contract. Now, you're welcome to go ahead and do the contract and upload it not signed so that we can see these details. That's fine too. It's totally up to you, but it's not required for you to upload a signed contract for these services until you know whether you got the grant or not. Okay. But again, we'll upload these samples so that you kind of can look at these. Just understand that if it's written in italics, it's optional. It's things that you can change to make your own based on your grant. But if it's not, it's things that are required. So it is required for you to provide us what your invoice what your contractor is going to invoice you for, and the amount that you're going to pay them per hour, how many, for how often, and the total amount that you plan to pay them in that contract. Those are requirements. Okay. All right. It is 4:50, so we've gone 20 minutes over our time. So if no one else
I
has
got
any
one
questions.
question.
Oh yeah, go
One,
ahead.
I got
Please.
one question. One,
Yes.
the RFA is noting that, especially in objectives, that it's supposed to be in narrative format. So is it okay that you bullet it, or should it be in narrative format?
It's fine with me if you bullet it. What I have, and I'll just be honest with you, and I don't know this for sure, this is just my observation, but it seems like the better organized your answers are, the better the scores are going to be. And so if in order for you to make your narrative make sense, it looks better for you to bullet it, I think that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
I don't think that would account against you at all. It is supposed to be a narrative, but yeah, it's fine for you to include bullets. And I would almost encourage it if that's the best way for you to organize your thoughts, organize what you
Okay.
plan to do. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay. Okay, so 2 questions. What time does the application have to be submitted tomorrow? So the only application that's due tomorrow is for grant readers. That shouldn't be anybody who is in this meeting. Anybody who is having anything to do with applying for a grant that would be a conflict of interest for you to apply to be a grant reader also. So that's what the due date is tomorrow. The due date for your application, for your 21st century application to be submitted, is not until midnight on March 20th. That is the due date for the application. And then once the draft is completed in EGAP and the superintendent approves, is that all you need for submission? Yes, so it needs to go all the way through the steps. So yes, it's, you start off submitting, so you change it to draft started, you put in all of your information, you approve it. It should next go to your financial person, your CSFO or CFO, or the financial person to approve. Once they've approved it, it then goes to an LEA authorized representative, which is typically your superintendent, but not necessarily. You might be a CBO that doesn't have a superintendent. It could be your CEO. Once they've approved it, that should be the final step. So it should be, I think the next step it will show in the process would be grant approved for funding or something like that. So once you've had it approved by those 3 levels, then you should be good to go. And again, don't wait to the last minute to do that, because we had several applicants last year who did not get their applications in time because somebody that was in that chain of command did not go in and click their button on time. So you're very welcome. Okay. Any other questions? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead. If there's no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end today's meeting, but I will get this posted to the YouTube channel. It will be under, RFA office hours and today's date. If you have any questions, say our next meeting. Let me go ahead and tell you when that is. So today is the 24th. So our next office hours meeting is March the 5th. Okay, so looking at my calendar. So that is next Thursday. So we will meet next Thursday, March 5th from 1 o'clock to 2 p.m. We will be sure to record it and put it in on the YouTube channel if you're not able to attend, but we hope to see you there. And I'm going to go ahead and end today's session, but thank you all so much for being here. We will see you next time.